A few days ago I was out at Southfield Reservoir near Doncaster doing a spot of distance feeder fishing. Now Southfield's a real bream mecca. It's full of bream. They have lots and lots of matches on this venue, 60-70 peg matches, and the pegging's very tight. But of course, when you go pleasure fishing and practicing, it's possible to catch a lot of fish. It's a fantastic bream venue. Having the right rods and the right equipment for this is paramount. You've got to have the right equipment when you're casting 60-70 metres to catch these fish. I used to do a lot of this type of fishing years ago, but things have moved on. Equipment's better, lines are better, we're now using braid. There's lots of things to look at when you're fishing at distance. The conditions were horrific. When I say horrific, we'd Storm Gladys right over the top of us. And you could almost see surfboards and surfers going past. The wind was that strong. We had some horrific waves on the water from left to right, and to say it was difficult to hit the spot was pretty much an understatement, to be honest. The day before I'd actually been to Langold Lake for a test day near Rotherham, another big lake, and I fished at 72 metres. So I really enjoyed this session. Although the fishing was very difficult, I enjoyed it, punching that feeder out to that distance, and could easily have fished up to 100 metres that day. Now 72 metres is a distance that matches can be won at. When you start looking at casting 100 metres, which these rods what we've got now were quite capable of doing that, then it's difficult to win matches. A lot of matches are won 60, 70, maybe 80 metres, but 100 metres is almost a line where you're pinching fish during a competition. Now on this particular occasion at Southfield, the wind was so bad to try and fish at that distance was an almost impossibility. And I'd spoke to some of the local anglers that said 50 to 60 metres was the length that a lot of the matches had been won at. Now I decided to fish even a little shorter than that, purely because when the wind's very strong, it's very difficult to hit a spot regularly when the wind's changing all the time. So I fished around about 45 metres. Even at that distance on this particular day, although I've already said the wind was across us left to right, it was also slightly in the face. You really needed to punch a feeder quite hard to hit the clip to drop in the right place, even allowing maybe as much as sometimes 15 metres up into the wind to actually get the feeder to hit the spot. Now sometimes it took me 2 and 3 attempts. And what I've always said is bad anglers make good casts all the time. In other words, if the feeder's going in the wrong place, stop it short, wind it back, recast. You're casting to a mark on the other bank. There's a building on the opposite bank there at Southfield, opposite Peg 2, and I just picked the edge of the building to cast it all the time. But at times, as I've said, you have to allow a big distance up into the wind to get the feeder to land in the right place. And of course, it's all right landing in the right place, but you also need the line to be quite straight. And this is why it's important to cast really hard into the wind and make sure you straighten that line out as much as possible. Although I've only fished 45 metres, I've also used braided line. I've used an 010 Acolyte braid. Now this is a very fine braid, so it doesn't catch the wind. If you were to step up to 012 in these conditions, it'd catch the line and bow the line, and you don't want that to happen. So I'm using the finest braid that I can get away with. I'm also using a shock leader. I'm using £10 Kamasan Animal shock leader line. It's a line that's very, very strong. You're not going to break off at all. You can really bend the rod into that feeder. And it's all about compressing the rod to get to the distance that you want to actually cast to. Where set up onto the 10-pound shock leader is very simple. I use a feeder link to connect the feeder on. So I've got a feeder link that I just put onto the 10-pound shock leader, and then just put a single float stop. Because the line's so thick, this float stop won't pass over any knots. Now what I do then, I have a separate 023 piece of supplex, about a metre, just a little bit longer than a metre. And what I do, I spin this together to create 6 or 7 inches of spun together 023. This is an 8-pound leader that I use below to attach the hook length. This makes sure that it hangs out from the actual feeder. For distance fishing, I always used to use the 13-foot Acolyte distance feeder rod. Now this rod's got a perfect playing action for catching fish from maybe 10 ounce up to 5-6 pound. It's a brilliant rod for distance fishing and can cast easily up to 100 metres. But what we've developed is a new rod, an extension rod. This is a 2-piece rod, so it's a lot easier to store. When you've got 3 sections, it's difficult to put those 3 sections together in a rod sleeve. What we tend to do now is take all his rods to the bank made up with the rigs attached, maybe taking the feeder off and the hook length, but keeping everything else intact on the rod. The extension rod is much easier to pack away into the old hole. You've just got 2 pieces of rod, and what you've got is a 6-foot piece and then a 7-foot that drops inside the butt. It extends from the butt, so it's much easier to transport. The extension rod has still got slightly oversized eyes, because when you're using braid you want that knot to pass through the eyes easily. It comes with a 2-ounce tip, a 2.5 and a 3-ounce tip. The action of the rod, because you do away with one of the joints, the action's fantastic on this rod. It really is unbelievable, the curve of the rod when you're playing fish, and it's capable of fishing for fish as small as 8 and 10 ounce on a feeder up to 3 or 4 pound, even bigger. It's a fantastic rod for distance feeder fishing. My choice of feeder for distance fishing is the new Cage Bomb feeder. These feeders range from 30 gram up to 70 gram. And on this particular day, I started with a 30 gram feeder casting 45 metres and quickly swapped to a 40 when the wind started to blow really strong. I even tried a 50 from time to time just to make sure that I got the cast right to the distance. Cage feeders need to be strong. Our cage feeders are very, very strong. You can't distort them in any way when you're filling them. They've also got just 2 legs at the bottom with the bomb tapered up to the feeder, almost like an Ardsley type bomb. When you're casting these feeders, they cast extremely straight. There's no oscillation through the air or anything, no movement as they're travelling through the air. The bomb at the bottom being on 2 legs makes it so you can fill the feeder easily and pack the ground bait in. If you want that ground bait to stay with the feeder when it gets to the bottom, you need to be able to get your fingers at the base of the feeder to pack the ground bait in. And this is exactly what these feeders do. These distance cage feeders are also camouflaged so they match the bottom. They're not going to be obtrusive on the bottom to the fish. For the rig, I like to use a feeder link. We produce 2 feeder links, one that's 75mm and one that's 50mm. I prefer to use the longer one for distance fishing. It's when you're using these type of links, you're fishing them free running on the line. This is a safe rig. If you crack off, the feeder's not connected in any way. Fishing feeders in loops or fixed rigs is not what you want to be doing when you're casting a distance. The snap swivels on the link are neat and tidy, and also a connection, a plastic connection at the top that's extra strong. They're not going to let you down in a fishing situation. I also like the fact that they're stiff and you get next to no tangles at all with them. In trying conditions today, I caught 7 or 8 bream. It was fantastic fishing really for that, you know, at the end of the day it's still winter time. Southfield Reservoir is Doncaster and district water. It's £5 a day on the bank. With quality fish like I've caught today, what better day's distance fishing can you get than that?